I'm not going to wait too much longer here. We're going to bring on Nan, bring her up on the panel here, and welcome her to Let's Talk Live. Nan Gallagher, attorney Nan Gallagher, how are you this evening, and welcome to the show?
How are you, Brian? It's so great to be here. I can only tell your audience, I feel like I'm fangirling a little bit. You know, all of you should imagine what it's like to meet someone you've watched on a screen for well over a year who you really admire and have an opportunity to just have a really important conversation with them. So thanks for having me.
No, I appreciate it. And again, I get to watch you quite a bit on Mike's show the other night, The Young Jerks, and everybody kept commenting on my videos like, you got to have Nan on. Everybody's hitting me on Twitter. You got to have Nan on. She watches you. She loves you. And I'm like, all right, let's just do this. Popular demand. Let's get her up here. And I'm really looking forward to this. So let's start this out. Can you please tell my audience a little bit about your background and what inspired you to become an attorney?
Oh, that's great. Thank you. I feel like some of your audience might be carried over from the Young Jerks. So please give grace, guys. If I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry. But I'm an attorney from New Jersey. I'm licensed in New Jersey, New York, DC, and the Third Circuit. I've been practicing now for almost 25 years. And I do healthcare law, which essentially I represent doctors and I do everything for them except matrimonial. I will not get involved in matrimonial actions, but civil law, administrative defense, criminal defense, anything involving insurance companies as it relates to the doctors getting their claims paid, etc. And by the way, with that reminds me, Brian, if you ever feel like you want to sink your teeth into the Luigi case, Luigi Mangione,
yes,
the unfortunate killing of the United Healthcare executive, I have a lot to say on that. But as a healthcare lawyer from New Jersey, I also have a tremendous love of true crime. And I've told another audience the other day that my kids say that mommy likes murder. And I really, in fact, if I had the ability to show you guys a bulletin board I have in my home office, there literally is a sign up that essentially says like, my mom loves murder. So I worry about the mental health of my children in the coming years. But I wanted to be an attorney for two reasons. Well, really three. One, I like to talk. Two, my late mother, God rest her soul, used to tell me, Nan, you make a federal case out of everything, which is probably true. And three, I really felt like it is important to make sure that justice is served, whether it's in a criminal courtroom, a civil courtroom, an administrative hearing. And there's got to be people who are passionate about that, who are representing both sides. And that kind of brought me to where I am. I own a law firm. I run a busy practice. I boss people around like a boss, but with professionalism and hopefully some good articulation. And I love what I do. And I love watching the YouTube content creators on all of these really budding and important and languishing cases. You all add something different to the mix.
I appreciate that. And so let's talk a little bit. How did you get involved in following the Karen Read case?
Yeah. By the way, I think it might be backwards on my camera, but I have my "I'm a Serious Person" T-shirt on. For anyone who's hate watching right now, I'm a serious person.
I love
it. Anyway, Karen Read case really, really interested me, not only because I just follow true crime and love a good mystery, but once the case became public, more public than I'm sure it was up in the Massachusetts area, once Aidan Carney kind of boots on the ground broke this case investigatively, I just kept hearing things and reading things, which my interest started in writing. I was like reading articles going, huh, what? And mainstream media was reporting some things. Now, keep in mind, I'm down in the New York, New Jersey metropolitan area. So I'm getting little bits and pieces. I happened to then start following Turtle Boy, and I'm reading these articles going, there seems to be a disconnect in the reporting. So I then kind of went to YouTube, which I was not a big YouTube user for a while. I got an interest in YouTube during the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, which was just, I mean,
blew up all over the place.
Complete shit show. And I'm here for it. But anyway,
literally a shit show.
Yeah. But you know what, though? That case, which was a civil action, spoke to me. But I went to YouTube then, which predated, obviously, the Karen Read matter. I went to YouTube then and realized that I was getting, and I dare say your audience is getting, better news quality without filters, without angles from YouTube content creators than they are from the mainstream media. And I just said to myself, I'm going to be as impartial as possible, read what I can read, listen to what I listen to. And I decided in my mind that at an absolute minimum, if I were a juror on her case, I would vote for reasonable doubt. I would have definitely put in a verdict for not guilty on the charges. That was the original charges, and then they were escalated. And then I saw all of the lambasting that was going on up there and the vitriol, and just, it was very divisive, and it still is. And I really would hope and I want that to change. So, and I think the YouTube creators I follow do as well. And I just said, if there's anything I can do to help this poor woman and her family, or to help the general public, not those in the solitary echo chamber of Free Karen Read, if there's anything I can do to help give some insight with my personality and my take, I wanted to do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's super polarizing up here. I mean, living in here around this area in Massachusetts, I mean, you can't go anywhere and no one would not know about this case. I mean, that's how polarizing it is. And it's like you have like the staunch supporters, like the diehard Free Karen Read, or you're just completely on the opposite side. But I'm going to tell you, like 99% of the people that I run into in and around the Massachusetts area are total Free Karen Read. I don't really see too many of the, what we call the blue shirt people. Too many of them. I mean, they'll hover around the courthouse when we're out there to hearings or during the trial, but not many of them that I know on the street, you know, that I'll walk around and someone will see me with like a Free Karen Read shirt and they'll be like, oh, she fucking killed him. You know, like we don't really hear that. I mean, you just hear people screaming back like, hey, Free Karen Read, we're with you. So it's a crazy case. And it's like one of the most craziest cases that I've personally followed. You know, it's just, it's insane what they're trying to do to Karen. I mean, it's just a complete sham of a trial. I just don't understand how a jury couldn't see through, you know, I mean, literally, I had friends of mine that don't really watch court cases or trials. And this time they obviously got invested because it was in Massachusetts, and they might've watched like a day or two of the trial, and they're watching like Jennifer McCabe and Brian Higgins and Brian Albert being on the stand. And they're like, are those the people that are on trial? Like,
yeah. You know, Brian, I'm listening to you and I'm listening to your accent, and it reminded me of something, which is I wanted to make sure your audience knew this. I also worked for a national law firm right out of Boston for a little over a year, many years ago. So they were headquartered in Boston. Boston is, and I live about 30 minutes out of New York City. Boston is my favorite city. I love visiting there. I love the people there. I love the real salt of the earth personalities that are up there, gravitate towards that. And the other thing I wanted to tell you is I have some, not many, clients from Massachusetts all over the state. And when I speak to them, I ask them, I think people think I'm this crazy true crime lady, but you know, I say, have you heard about this case? And they've all heard about it. And in varying degrees, which I love hearing. I want to raise awareness. And for those who are from Massachusetts and have not heard about this case, they all seem to have this, she's being railroaded. What is going on? Why are taxpayer dollars being wasted on this mentality? So I think about those things and I say, gosh, we've got to raise more awareness.
Mm.
Is exactly what I am trying to do. I have no angles here other than to try to help educate people.
Yeah, I'm gonna say there's a lot of people in the chat that absolutely love you.
Uh,
And Kelly Reed, Karen Reed's cousin, is actually in the chat right now.
Hi,
And she
Kelly.
said, I'm 100% free Karen Reed. I'm a new fan of Nan. Plus, we all cherish you, Brian. So, Kelly, thank you for jumping in and watching the show. It's really great to see you here.
Thanks, Kelly.
So let's talk a little bit about Robert Alessi.
Oh,
Absolutely love this guy. A lot of people don't know that he's been involved in Karen Reed's case and on that team for a little time now. He's just kind of been in the background. And I love the fact that, this time around in the hearings, you're seeing him more prominent in these hearings. I think he's very easy to follow, which is nice, and very precise in the things that he talks about. And I think he's an absolutely brilliant match for Brennan. I think he just gets up there and smacks him every single time. What are your thoughts on Alessi and Hank Brennan?
fun? Isn't that fun to watch that? Does that anyone in the chat raise your hand if they like watching Brennan get smacked around figuratively? That's not a call to arms. So this is another reason why I think it's so vital to follow content creators, because mainstream media will not say that Robert Alessi has been part of the team, even in the backdrop, for some time. I wouldn't have known that other than hearing it in these circles. But I have to say, when thinking back to some of the statements that I was making about him last Thursday on my YouTube debut, they kind of came to fruition. I was so happy to be validated personally, not like an I told you so validated, but just a wow. I said the other day, he's a tremendous ad. And this in no way takes away from David Yannetti and Alan Jackson. It is just, we all as people, we all as lawyers or doctors or people who work in gas stations, etc., we all have different approaches to how we do our job. And he has this very methodical approach to his diction. I mean, as an English major, I was all over listening to him saying flummoxed and all of the great vocabulary words.
Yeah.
Wow. But also actually saw on X the other day, maybe yesterday, someone was saying when he starts doing his orchestral hand gestures during the oral arguments, you better buckle up. And I'm paraphrasing that, but it was a really great comment. The scientific and methodical, not methodology, but the methodology. Everybody take a drink. Methodology. No, but the methodical approach that he takes to just breaking down what I would perceive really complex arguments. Everyone has to try to understand, because while things sound clear as day to us and we're like, this is so fundamental, we understand it, but not everyone follows at such a granular level. He takes very complex concepts and breaks them down. And
in simple terms.
God bless color coding. I mean, when I heard color coding, I rolled up my sleeves and I was like, I am here for this. Bring it, Alessi. So he is absolutely fantastic. And there was some discussion yesterday on some of the social media about who he should cross-examine, and not to the detriment of any of the other current attorneys, but there's scientific parts of the defense of Karen Reed where, in my opinion, Bob Alessi might be even more pivotal in crossing. And one other point on that, Brian.
Sure.
Sometimes, as a litigator, sometimes it's best to have a different attorney do a cross if you have to repeat cross someone? Because like someone like Jen McCabe or anyone else, fill in the blank, knows what she's getting from Alan. And I think Alan should cross her, because the best thing that can happen is when you are being asked questions by someone you hate. You're triggered and things come out, and it's like Hollywood for attorneys. We love it. But on the scientific pieces like Trooper Guarino,
Yeah.
Alessi would be pivotal for that.
Yeah.
So anyway, I ramble on, but I really think he's the boss. I'm going to get an Alessi t-shirt, just like I'm going to get a Jackson and a Yannetti one. You guys will be seeing them if I hit your shows.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think and then I think kind of bringing him around the second time here to kind of give a new look to the judge as well too. I mean, we know that, there's been a lot of absolute bias towards Alan. She's not too in with Alan Jackson and Liz Little. She gives David Yannetti a little bit, I'm in talking about Judge Cannoni, obviously, gives David Yannetti a little bit more levity. He's a Boston guy, been in the court system. But I think to throw this new attorney in there, she's got to kind of whittle her way around this and say, okay, how do I, kind of dance around with this guy? And I think it's a good strategy in that sense too. I honestly think we're going to probably see a lot of him in Karen Read 2.0. What is your thoughts on that?
I think you will as well. And if anyone can hearken back to one of or the first hearing, I don't remember what they were there for, but the first hearing when Alessi was, newly brought to the case, he and Brennan were getting their footing with Judge Cannoni, and Judge Cannoni was getting her footing with them. Everyone was a little trepidatious, like, okay, getting to know each other. What do you like? What do you dislike? Should I stand at a podium? Should I not? So I think I don't just think, it was very abundantly evident to me on Friday's hearing, which I was watching from court and just laughing my ass off. I'm sorry, I don't mean to curse on your.
No, let's go ahead. Have at it. We're adults.
But, I'm sitting there going, I'm going to get kicked out of court or held in contempt because this is just masterful. But as I was watching that, it was definitely apparent to someone like me that Alessi was becoming more comfortable. And let me tell you all something. I think your audience would gravitate towards this. I know you would as well. I saw everything I need to know about Hank Brennan from the first couple of minutes of that stream. I don't remember who I was watching it through, but Alessi walked into that courtroom before the hearing, and Brennan did not even greet Alessi. Okay, Alessi had to go up to him and say hello, or hello, sir. And one thing the judge I used to clerk for used to say to me, you've got to be cordial and friendly with your adversaries. It used to be very heartwarming for him on motion days when the adversaries, the attorneys sit around generally and wait on motion days to be heard. And when two adversaries sit next to each other, even if they're going to take the gloves off and go at each other on a motion, if you guys can be professional and human beings, you do so. And Brennan didn't even acknowledge him. So this is a strange mission for him. I don't understand his motivations. I can tell your audience that he is torn through that $75,000 that were allotted to him, which is what it's gone. So it take great pleasure, anybody who's following the case, that he's probably now working for free and he's not enjoying it because he got spanked.
Yeah. Let's do this. Let's do a little compare and contrast. I'll play about 3 minutes of each. We'll play Alessi and we'll play Brennan. We'll talk a little bit about, their styles. And I got some questions about Brennan when we get to his little, his testimony here. So I think I have Alessi first. Actually, this might be Brennan. Let's go talk about Brennan since we talked about Alessi quite a bit here. So let's play through a couple minutes of this.
Attorney Alessi, pardon me, asked you about Dr. Walsh's statement about the cause of injuries. You remember? He just asked you that?
Yeah.
What he didn't offer in the report is this, and let me know if you agree with it. Decedent John O'Keefe was documented to have craniocerebral injuries, including skull fractures of the optical skull, and the
Thank you for
right
the super chat. Appreciate
peroneal
that.
bone with associated subdural and subarachnoid hemorrhages. These injuries of the scalp, skull, and brain are consistent with, among other things, a backwards fall, unobstructed, unprotected falls due to various reasons and known to result in serious craniocerebral injuries resulting in death. Other mechanisms of injury cannot be excluded. Do you agree with that?
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm going to Malone to do it.
Do you agree with that part that you didn't hear of Mr. Walsh's opinion?
Yes,
The documented changes in color, swelling of soft tissue around the eyes are most consistent with the medical finding of periorbital ecchymosis, as documented in the autopsy report. Periorbital ecchymosis is a passive accumulation of blood around the eyes secondary to the documented skull fractures. These findings are less consistent with and are not documented as contusions of the eyes. The 1 centimeter laceration of the right upper eyelid, laceration of the anterior right tongue, and abrasion of the anterior and left aspect of the nose are documented, considered nonspecific, and may have occurred to a variety of mechanisms. Do you agree with that?
yes,
Okay. The 2 red contusions on the dorsal aspect of the right hand were documented. The hand injuries may represent an injury sustained during an unprotected fall in which the back of the hand impacts the ground. These hand injuries are nonspecific and may have resulted from impact of hand with any blunt object. Do you agree with that?
it's possible, but there are other mechanisms.
Okay. When you talked about those articles that Mr. Alisi had you read, there is nothing that details what pattern recognition analysis is, the specificity which you are looking for when you're looking for a wound, does it?
I disagree.
Okay. When you looked at that Exhibit 5, if you could pull that up, you said individually, none of those wounds could you say to a reasonable degree of medical certainty were caused by a dog. It's only if you looked at them collectively.
Yes,
Okay. When you look at those collectively, it does not tell you the order in which the wounds were incurred, does it?
no,
It doesn't tell you if they're all incurred at the same time, does it?
they were occurred around the same time, I can tell you that.
Yes. But they don't tell you the order, the chronology, do they?
No,
No. In fact, when you look at the studies that you introduced with Mr. Alisi, let's talk about the Mutaton very quickly. There's a chart, page 298. It talks about the things you would want to do to identify a wound. It talks about scene investigation, doesn't it, in the chart, table 2?
that's a fatal case, though.
Scene investigation is something you would look for?
That's in a fatal case caused by a dog. The cause of death was the dog.
This whole thing is, the whole excerpt is a fatal case that you're relying on for this pattern recognition analysis. This whole article is about a fatal case,
That's
isn't
what
it?
I'm saying.
Right. And in this fatal case that you're relying on to say this pattern recognition analysis, it points out scene investigation is the priority, doesn't it?
I think you misunderstand. The focus of that article is to identify the dog that caused the fatal injury. In this particular case, I don't believe any of those are fatal injury. That is not the purpose of the identification of those injuries.
Does the chart
How does that play to a jury? That snarky.
Not at all. Doesn't play well at all. But and by the way, I'm a little snarky, Brian. So I had to, and I've been known to have RBF in my life. So I will say this: I had to learn the hard way that as aggressive as you think you want to be, the everyday jurors, they don't really like that. They're not really wowed by the gotcha moments. Now, I'm going to say there's an AJ exception to that because it's just, he's from another universe. It's just amazing to me to watch him. But one of the other things that I wanted to mention on that clip is that Hank Brennan is literally trying to depose her. Like this daughter hearing, she is a uniquely qualified expert, ranging from her forensic pathology background to her medical degree to her police background to the experience in the ERs and dog bites, both as a treating physician and as a supervising or an educating physician. Hold that aside. She is there to give her opinions at trial. So she's already qualified. The Daubert motion or attempt, which was an outright failure as far as I'm concerned in the end, really was his his conniving, that's my opinion, opportunity
Mhm.
to get a first bite at the apple. So then he can have something to aha her with at trial. And, you know, the woman is a seasoned KG veteran, and he's going to try to confront her at trial with, but you said this on this day when I asked you this really pigeonholing, unfair question that wasn't, the objection wasn't overruled, so I got this question in, and it's going to possibly try to rattle her. I thought she came in much stronger for this
Great.
Daubert hearing than she had at trial. The other thing I think is important on that is that she's giving him answers to his questions and he doesn't like it. And it
Yeah.
gets what it happens to all of us. I don't like your answer, but that's the evidence and that's what the jury has to weigh. So I'm not loving him. I don't like his approach, and I don't think a jury will either.
Yeah, I went to try to find the clip, and I was going through like hours and I couldn't find it. There was a point, I know, when he was crossing her, he had that book that I think was written by his friend, is the dog bite book or whatever, and he kind of like threw it on the table in front of her like some Hollywood dramatic moment. And I'm
Rude.
thinking to myself, dude, that's not going to play well in front of a jury. Like, he threw it at her and kind of turned his back and walked away and went back to the podium. And I'm like, I feel like I'm literally watching a movie right now.
Yeah.
Just not going to play well for a jury.
It's not. And it's so funny, though, because juries make decisions on evidence and verdicts based on like the most superficial reasons. I was once told by a jury after I got a verdict that they didn't like the shoes I was wearing on the second day of trial, and that really stuck in two of their heads. I'm not saying that's why they did or did not rule in my favor, but they make really interesting yet weird, superficial decisions on things they see, behaviors that they experience. I will tell you this: anyone who's rude to a witness who is more seasoned in years is not going to play well. You need to respect your elders, and especially ones who school you in education and experience.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get to we'll play a little bit of Alessi. We'll talk a little bit about him, and then got a couple more questions about the defense team. Let me just get to some of these super chats that came up. So Sandy says, $10. Thank you so much, Sandy. She said, thanks for all the great content, Brian, and welcome, Attorney Gallagher. Thank you so much. We have Jen O, a member for 3 months, said excited for our new bestie, Only Nan. I love that. Bukaki Duckworth says Only Nan, fuck the world. I love that. Armor of Alessi, $5, says, I think Alessi is a masterful at making complicated things understandable and handles Bev's snark like a juggler with fire sticks. Oh, that's really good.
That's right.
Another $5 super chat from Armor of Alessi said, you cannot say it, but I can. In my opinion, it is possible that Hank is getting paid by funds laundered at what we say a pizza joint.
Oh, man.
So we got checking in. $10. Thank you, Mike. I appreciate that. So thank you, Brian and Only Nan. And then Catastrophe says, Hank filed a motion today to not pay for the expert. I haven't seen that motion, but definitely I'll have to take a look at it after the show. And thank you for updating us. Buzzing for the Truth checking in. 12-month member. Thank you. Says, hey, Nan. Well, hello.
Hey,
all right, let's watch a little bit of Alessi on this previous hearing here. Listen to his masterclass.
May it please the court. Mr. Green is eminently qualified to provide testimony in this case with regard to the subject matter that has been challenged by the prosecution in this case, and that is with regards to search house long to die in the cold that occurred at 2:27:40 a.m. on January 29th, 2022.
I'm going to tell you right now, Nan, what I love about this, and it just brought me back to Karen Reed 1.0, the opening statement, David Yannetti. Karen Reed was framed.
Yeah.
It had that same tonality to it. It had fact. It was just driven You know, if a jury was sitting there, I think it would just prop them up. And I thought it was just masterful the way that he opened there.
Brian, before you hit play, one of the other things I want your audience to appreciate is Alessi has a method of telling the court what he's going to argue or what he's going to next. So he'll say, and I'm now going to address the issue of, or we're now going to look at these arguments, Your Honor. And I will tell you, just from being educated in debate and being in debate clubs, going through law school and moot courts, and now in of court where I listen to young attorneys making arguments, being able to forecast to your listener, including the jury, by the way, that'll play well to a jury. When you forecast to your listener where you're going within your argument, how it's going to be structured, it allows the brain to like decompress a little bit, so you know where a certain piece is ending and a certain piece is beginning. It has a melody to it, and I would bet, and maybe Kelly Reed could find out for me, I bet you he has a musical background down to his conductor hand gestures. I bet he does.
That'd be interesting to find that out. I'll have to kind of sniff around and see what I can come up with. Let me just get this in really quick. $10 super chat from Cape Cod Cred said, we all as YouTube followers have the time to digest and learn. Do you recommend the defense takes time to dumb down things more and drive the NG verdict to the jury? So let's do this. I'm going to actually ask Nan about that question after this, and we'll get to that. And I'd love to hear her perspective on that here. All right, let's play about 2 minutes of this. I just want to see the cadence and the I mean, this Alessi is like absolute passion. I love watching him work, and it's just really great. Really great stuff.
Me too.
Mr. Green, and I want to cover the baseline for this hearing first. Mr. Green testified at the first trial. He testified without objections as to his qualifications. He testified without objections to his methodology.
That's what people really have to understand in those two, is that they're making a record again. So if this ever, God forbid, has to go to an appeal, this is all on the record. And I love that he's pointing out the fact, like, listen, you let Mr. Green come in and testify before. No one had any qualms about it. He went through, what was it? The Daubert hearing. He went through that. You've allowed him to come in. So how are you not going to allow him in this next trial? Absolutely love it. Love it.
Agreed.
Your Honor sat obviously and presided over that trial. Your Honor did not issue after his testimony any limiting or curative instructions with regard to either his qualifications or methodology, nor did the prosecution after his testimony stand up and ask for any such limitations or qualification. The baseline for his qualifications and methodology was established again without objection. And
it's Peggy's phone.
But they are being challenged now.
I was just waiting, Your Honor. They are being challenged now, but the reason I state that is because what Mr. Green has provided in response to this motion is even more detail than what happened in the first trial. In Mr. Brennan's argument, he did not make one argument about Mr. Green's qualifications. Zero. So I'm assuming,
Here comes the passion.
because there's nothing in their motion
Here it
that
comes.
even goes into why he might not be qualified. So to me, Your Honor, that's a tacit concession, if not expressed, that he's qualified. And of course, he has to be qualified in digital forensics because there are 5 other areas of digital forensics opinions and methodology that Mr. Green is testifying about that has not been challenged. So to me, it is rather odd right off the jump that there's no challenge to 5 other areas of data forensics, and there's just this challenge to one aspect of his whole testimony and opinions. I have provided Your Honor with 2 exhibits demonstrative in support of my oral argument. Exhibit 1 is entitled Digital Forensics Methodology Regarding Subject Artifact, and Exhibit 2 is entitled Digital Forensic Product Tools Used by Witnesses. The Commonwealth has agreed to my use of those exhibits. They had some, I agreed to theirs, and I would like to, Your Honor, use those in a moment. The Commonwealth, in its oral argument, said 10 times just now that there's no methodology and that Mr. Green does not articulate a methodology. That is incredible to me because the opposition and Mr. Green's affidavit, in fact, are replete with the methodology. And here is the key, Your Honor. While Mr. Brennan challenges the methodology, none of his witnesses, neither Mr. Whiffen nor Ms. Hyde, challenge the methodology. As a matter of fact, in their 2 reports, neither of them even describe Mr. Green's methodology, nor do they challenge it. And of course they can't, because it's the same exact methodology that they use. And that's what I would like to go to now.
All right. I don't want to play too much, but
he's forecasting where he's going and his
Yeah.
voice builds. I love it.
yeah.
I'm
I
here
love
for it.
how he starts to build his momentum, that passion starts kicking in, and he gets very demonstrative, and I love that he uses that word because it's such a great word. Let me just pull up a couple of these. Mimi, thank you so much for becoming a new YouTube member. And Glamour with $10 says, hi, Nan and Brian. Glad to hear you live again, Brian. And Nan, Dr. Russell is amazing and very impressive. If he treats Dr. Russell like that in the trial, the jury will want to slap him. Happy Monday, all. I love it. I love the
Amen.
opinions. So, I mean, again, it's a good comparison of Alessi versus Brennan. It just is a complete masterclass. Takes that information, and that's what I love about Alan Jackson too. Is they take that very complex information and they break it down in a very simplest terms so people can understand it. Let me ask you this, Nan, and we'll get back to that question that one of my viewers had earlier, because I actually have this in my notes. So this time around, what do you feel like should be the major focus on the defense's part? Obviously, the Commonwealth is going to lay out their case that Karen Reed hit John O'Keefe and left. But what would you like to see them focus, this time around? And what would what things would you like to see this time that we didn't see last?
That's great. By the way, I'd be very interested to see the prosecution lay out a case, because they sure didn't during the first trial. But I digress.
Right.
As far as 2.0 is concerned, and I always feel the need to give this preface, which is I have no criticism of her team, and we all as lawyers learn from experiences, and not once in leaving a trial in my career or a deposition, which is sworn out of court testimony, I've walked out of all of those saying, I should have asked that, or I should have done that. But in terms of seeing something change, I think that the defense needs to not presume that this is so clear on its face. And many of the people I'm sure who are in your audience think it is like clear as day, as do I.
Mhm.
But you have to kind of say, well, what would the average impartial juror think? So don't presume it's as simple on its face, and put on more witnesses. Be in a position where you can explore, perhaps lead with ARCA. I also think that they should do their very best. And I don't know the specifics of the prior motion that must have been filed before the first trial, which limited any reference to ARCA being engaged by the
Right.
FBI or an FBI investigation or
Yeah.
probe. But to the extent that might be revisited, it's sure worth it. I mean, Brennan's revisiting everything, so they should start revisiting as well. But lead early on with ARCA, put it in, and by the way, before that, in your opening, really say because that's the essence. And I really loved, Brian, when you approached Plevin on the street outside the court, you were like, do you believe in science or something like that?
Asked him if he thought the earth was round.
Yeah, like seriously.
He said that's offensive to ask that question. I'm
How
like,
dare you
why?
ask?
He's like, oh, it's spherical.
How dare you ask such a logical
I
question?
know.
But anyway, I
And he
think,
tried to actually, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
He actually, he acted like he didn't know who I was. I'm like, come on, Plevin, you know who I am. You know, like
he knows everything. He's probably made
everything. He's
Sims
probably watching us
video
right now.
about you as well, or you know, a simulated BLT sandwich at this point, which, by the way, are my favorite sandwiches, on rye, mayo on the side. But anyway, bacon, well done. You don't say extra crispy when you order bacon, because it will come out burnt. Well, you say well done. But anyway, lead with more ARCA. Let the jury decide early on in their minds that don't emphasize so much the conspiracy. It's there.
Yeah.
Lay it out throughout all of your questioning. And I think one of the things that the onlookers, the people who watched the trial, don't really realize is that even though the defense only put on, I don't know what it was, 5 or 6 witnesses, they actually got the benefit of a lot of the other witnesses on cross. So they were in a position where, through cross-examination, they could ask questions, you know, for example, of Jen McCabe. They got a lot of their evidence from Jen McCabe and Higgins. So they didn't need that many. I think they need a police procedures expert, which I'm happy we can maybe chat about that when it comes to Enrique Delgado Garcia.
Yeah.
And lastly, and there's a bunch of different suggestions, but lastly, I would say that emphasize the sheer number of coincidences, how that just, you know, make it make sense. How do all of these coincidences happen? And I want to mention one thing to you about that, because the number of coincidences as it relates to reasonable doubt, like, you got to emphasize reasonable doubt. But when talking about coincidences, I was talking to a sheriff's officer in a courthouse last week, and we were talking about this case, and he knew a lot about it. And I asked him 2 questions. I said, do you speak up about this case? He says, no, law enforcement will not speak up about this case. But the takeaway from that was that there's a fear of doing that. You know, if you speak up, your voice might be held against you, and you don't want to get yourself in trouble. The other thing he said to me, he said, Nan, there are no coincidences. If you think, you know, if you see someone in 2 different places behind you, they are following you. It's not a coincidence. So I think about that, and I think these the defense team could really strategize and say they just don't add up. And brother counsel did a whole presentation on coincidences. It was very effective in another closing argument on another national case a few months ago, and juries really, they do tend to gravitate to that.
Very, very interesting. Let's do this. Let's shift gears a little bit, but before we do that, I want to kind of do some name association. I asked you about this, and you're like, I'm all about it. I thought this would be a fun little game to play. I'm going to throw some names, and if you could give us maybe a sentence or 2 of how you feel about this specific person or team member that I bring up, and it's all Karen Reed related. Then we're going to transition a little bit into Trooper Enrique Delgado Garcia. So I want to ask your thoughts on that. But let me just throw this out at you. All right, so we'll start with this, the Karen Reed defense team. I know we could literally break them all down by specific person, but you can give us a sentence or 2 of how you feel about the Karen Reed defense team.
And before I answer you, I really would love everybody to just take a moment and like this video, subscribe if you haven't. I don't care if you like what I'm saying or not. Brian is perhaps one of, if not the most compassionate and passionate podcasters that I've encountered in now personally, but as a viewer. Really like and subscribe. All right, her defense team.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Wow, thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a serious person, Brian. Okay. So, all right. Her defense team.
Yeah.
The Karen Reed defense team is the most effective set of advocates that I have ever witnessed in person and on TV. And they take OJ Simpson's quote dream team. I know you're probably old enough to remember them.
I remember. I watched the trial.
That dream team is nothing. OJ's dream team is nothing compared to the quality and caliber of them.
Wow. Okay. Let me throw this out. Karen Reed.
I feel like I have tremendous sympathy and empathy for her, but I did put something on Twitter. I'm sorry to elaborate, but I just wanted to mention, I did put something on my Twitter yesterday when I made a donation to her fund. And I think this sums it up. Nothing can temper the spirit of a warrior as much as the challenge of dealing with impossible people in positions of power. And that's a credit to Carlos Castaneda. She's a warrior.
She's a warrior. Yeah. The thing that's amazing about Karen, that I've sat here and followed this case for almost 2 years now. And I always say this, that she never has faltered once in front of anybody. And believe me, I'm sure that shit happens behind private closed doors. I'm sure there's tears and there's hugs and frustration and screaming, but not once in the public has she faltered once. And the thing that I love about it too is that these motherfuckers, I'm swearing. I got a lady on the
for
panel.
it.
Sorry.
Bring it, Brian.
These motherfuckers went to her in the very beginning of all this and tried to offer her a deal. We figured that out in the Vanity Fair article. And I think it was like a couple of years she would have taken. And I love the fact that, and this is what solidifies her fucking innocence, that she could have faltered and said, fuck it, I'll go to jail for 3 years or whatever. I'll walk out of this, go on with my life. But she said, you know what? Fuck you. Fuck you. Bring it on. Because you know why? I'm 1000% innocent and I'm going to battle this all the way to the end. And I love people like that. I love people that don't quit, I'm literally looking over my threshold right here. As you walk into my studio, there is a sign over it that says, the best is yet to come. And as I walk out and I shut things down every night and I leave, it says, never give up. Never give up over my threshold. And I love that. And that is Karen Reed. She's just never given up. And she just comes back, harder and harder every single time. Every piece of shit they throw at her, they throw it back, tenfold right back in the direction. So I think she is in good hands with the defense team. I wouldn't say that I'm excited and looking forward to 2.0. I hope that we're not going to have that happen, but it seems pretty staunch that Bev really wants to get this trial going. And, April 1st, we're going to be seeing it. So
Brian, there's that passion I'm talking about. I agree with everything you have to say. And I did want to mention to you, I have a small gift that's headed your way for your studio.
Oh, I appreciate it.
I wanted to congratulate you on your new space. That's wonderful.
Wow. Thank you so much. I'm really honored about that. All right. Let me throw another name, Brian Higgins, at you.
Oh my God. All right. Wait, I don't have to say one word. I can say sentences, right?
Yeah. Give a couple sentences. We'll move on to the next name.
He's all right. These opinions are my own.
Uh-huh.
I think Brian Higgins is I think he's a killer. I'm sorry. I think he did not intend to kill John O'Keefe, but the facts don't add up in my mind. And I think he is shady. I think he is conniving. I think he didn't order a pizza at whatever o'clock in the middle of the night.
Exactly.
And didn't butt dial Brian Albert. But most notably, I think I learned everything I needed to know about him when he quite altruistically decided to go to the federal kiosk at the Canton PD and out of the goodness of his heart curate a goddamn extraction,
Yeah.
pardon my
I'll
French.
give you what I want to give you.
Right. I'll give you what I want to give you.
Right.
Curated text between me and Ms. Reed, which, by the way, like, she didn't like you, man. Like,
Yeah.
she didn't like you. But what you didn't want to do, because you knew better, was let them see all your call logs, your Apple Health data, the whether there was voicemails, whether they're deleted texts and deleted internet searches. I'm not techie, so give grace.
Sure.
He's a shady character and a key to the case, and I am here to watch it in 2.0. Shouldn't have to happen. He's the biggest problem in this case for the prosecution. Proctor's number 2, Guarino is number 3.
Yeah, I mean, I've always agreed that Brian Higgins really was a big piece of the catalyst in all of this, and that's my opinion. I know other people have theirs, but Brian Higgins for me has always stuck out. I think he has the most major issues in all of this. Sorry, destroying your phone, bringing it to a military base and discarding it, extracted certain information off your phone. Listen, if you ain't got nothing to do with it, you go, listen, I'm not involved in any of this. Here's my phone, take an extraction, but hiding that, big problems. All right, Brian Higgins.
I did Higgins. You mean Albert?
Brian Albert, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
wait, let me be very clear. I did not do Brian. I did not do Brian Higgins. Sorry.
Nor did Karen Reed.
I'm sure that'll get
Brian
fixed by
Albert.
the trolls. I
Right.
must have a conflict. But anyway, who are we talking about?
Brian Albert.
Brian Albert. Brian Albert is, if Higgins is a decorated dude, Brian Albert is a dangerous dude.
Yeah.
He's got his hands in this, and he should have come out. Even if Karen hit him with her car, he knew that this happened. He knew this happened. He knew there was a body on his front lawn, and he should have come out. But beyond that, I think he was involved in this cover up. These are my opinions, and he's dangerous, folks. It's a police officer. I think he's retired now, but a retired police officer from the Boston PD. And unfortunately, I've encountered many police who have real corruption issues. I think he's one of them. Yeah.
He's actually involved in finding the Craigslist killers. Isn't that amazing?
Was it the Craigslist? And I think he had a hand in the Boston Strangler or something.
I think so too, yeah.
Some other notable case. I apologize. I don't remember who it was.
I think
that
he's
might have been the
involved.
wrong century, the Boston Strangler.
I think he's involved. I think he helped carry John's body out, to be honest with you. All right, two more. And we've saved the best for last. And then I'll pull these quick super chats up, and then let's get into Trooper Enrique de Garcia, and then we'll end the show with a little bit of Brian Koberger. Okay, here we go. Jennifer McCabe.
Liar. Liar, and think about it. These are my opinions, but Jen McCabe is, as I use this to refer to someone else in this case the other day, she's the type of person, in my opinion, who will steal your wallet and help you look for
Find it. Yeah.
Yep.
I agree.
Real liar.
I agree. All right, one more, and then we'll move on. We'll talk about Trooper Enrique de Garcia. Trooper Proctor.
Comedic entertainment watching it. I mean, I don't know, but Trooper Proctor, an absolute aberration to women. And I'm personally offended at what he said about Karen Reed. And if I was in person when he said it, he would have been assaulted, and I would be in jail right now, and there would be a free Nan Gallagher fund. But and all you could grift for it, right? But he shirked his responsibilities because he is devoid of a moral compass, and it is making a mess of everybody's lives. Everybody involved's lives are ruined, whether it's people going after the McAlberts, people going after Karen Reed and her family. He's a jerk, and he needs to probably go visit. I don't know his religious background. He probably needs to go visit a confessional soon, or, as I said the other day, get himself a lot more experienced in the custodial arts, because he's going to be cleaning up more than just evidence in the near future.
I just got your Breakfast Club reference there.
Thank you.
Yes.
Dating myself.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. And the thing that I always get this point across too is that this type of behavior that he displayed in Karen Reed's case is not the only time he's done this. This is a very juvenile thing that has been carried on through his entire life. And unfortunately, he tricked the system to get in to be a cop, because this should have been scrubbed out in his psych evaluation. But this is not the only time he's done this. And that's the scary thing about it. Because what other cases has he been involved in that he's looked through, females' phones and said, I'm looking for nudes, or I'm looking at her text conversation, she's talking about this, or, looking at suspects or whoever it may be, witnesses, and he's looking through their personal stuff and having conversations with 1, friends, 2, family members, and 3, his superiors. Pretty disgusting stuff. Pretty disgusting stuff.
I heard you say that on a prior stream. This isn't the first time he's done it, and you are so right. They don't that doesn't
just happen overnight.
Right. And there should be, in my opinion, measurements and benchmarks and protocols and reevaluations in place for those types of continuing rampant unprofessional behaviors in police officers and state troopers to be measured and monitored over time. And his superiors and colleagues were aware of it. Like, they were on some of these texts, liking and laughing. Like, this isn't a surprise to anybody. So you got a real cancer going on in some of the police and state police departments up there. I really hope this case and the Birchmore case and Enrique Delgado Garcia's case help to revamp this. And it's sure not expedient. Everything is taking forever up there. I wish it would be a little bit faster.
Ridiculous. It is ridiculous.